Welcome back to Coffee and Tea with CarrieVee. I'm CarrieVee, your biggest fan, the person who will believe in you until you can believe in yourself. And even until you believe in yourself, and when you're believing in yourself, of course, the phone comes on right at the worst time. I will still believe in you. This podcast is all things communication, leadership, confidence, clarity. It's all things life. And we have a very special guest with us today, Jim Carlough, who has written a fabulous book about the 6 pillars of effective leadership. And I love all things leadership. And Jim has over 30 years of experience. So he is going to bring us bucketfuls of gold today. So, Jim, can you tell us a little bit about you and why the book and why are you so passionate about leadership?
So those are great questions and a great place to start. So I have been in the healthcare industry my entire professional career.
Okay.
And most of that has been in from low-level management all the way up to president of an organization. In the last 25 years, I started about 25 years ago mentoring people. And I noticed as I mentored more and more people, there was a common thread. And that thread was organizations thrusted people into leadership because they did good at their first job at the company, but then didn't tell them or give them any guidance on how to manage people.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I looked at that and I looked at the things they were asking me to help them with, they really centered around the people management component of it. And even for me, two of the pillars are empathy and compassion.
Mm.
And I didn't have those when I first started in management. In fact, back in 1983, management styles back then were more authoritarian than they are today. So I believe a couple of things. Number one, no one is a born leader. Nobody comes out of mom with leadership capabilities that don't have to be developed.
Agreed.
So I'm a firm believer that leaders aren't born leaders, leaders are developed.
Yes.
That's number one. That's myth busting number one. The other thing that I believe in is I believe that if you use these characteristics that I outline or the 6 pillars, you will have a much more committed team, productive team, and people who will follow you throughout your career. And I've had a number of people who have worked with me over my career that have often reached out to me when they're looking for a new job to say, hey, would love to come back and work for you. Do you have any openings? And many times, unfortunately, I don't. But there have been times when I probably have had a dozen or more people actually work for me more than one time in their career.
Wow.
And so I think part of it is it then resonates with the people that I work with. Now, I say that, but I also have to admit that when I started off as a leader in my first leadership role, I was horrible. In fact, I made this comment a couple weeks ago. I probably need to find those people and apologize because hopefully I didn't damage anybody permanently.
Mhm.
But when I look back on how I managed then versus how I manage now, it's light years different. And to me, leadership is an never ending evolution because as society and the world changes, leadership practices have to change.
Yes.
And so to me, all of that put together, and then I got very disenchanted with the media during COVID. And I started I stopped watching the news because I
Mhm.
couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I just felt I felt the media lacked integrity.
Yes.
I also think Washington, D.C. lacks integrity.
Hmm.
And to me, that's my number one pillar, and it's non-negotiable. And so that from that perspective, that's when I said, I need to start to put this down on paper and I need to start talking about it and educating more people and helping them develop these traits.
Yeah. So your number one pillar is integrity.
Yes, ma'am.
I absolutely love that. And in the beginning of your book, in the prelude to when the book is coming, you talk about some very effective leaders from history. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you chose them? What pillars did they emulate, or do they emulate all of them? Like, why those leaders?
So what I tried to do, I felt I'm just an individual leader or manager. People don't know me, but I wanted people, if they read the book, to get an understanding of what the pillar was, how I got introduced to that pillar potentially.
Hmm.
But I also wanted to have exercises that people could use to implement that pillar. And I also wanted to be able to give real world references of people that the readers would know their name,
Hmm.
like Nelson Mandela. Who doesn't know Nelson Mandela and what he did?
Right.
But I also use names of people in U.S. businesses. Warren Buffett, as an example, I use when we talk about stability. When we talk about focus, I talk about Jeff Bezos,
Hmm.
the head of Amazon, and how he took an online book company in the mid 90s and made it what it is today, which has put a lot of people out of business, but it's made it very convenient for me not to have to go to the mall anymore, and stuff just arrives at the front door. So I thought it was important for people to be able to make those connections. If they knew that the XYZ company leader leads with integrity, for integrity, for example, I use some people may not recognize the name Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft.
Okay.
And when he got to Microsoft in 2014, he made it very, very clear that under his direction, and under his leadership, integrity was going to be the number one driver of decisions. And we're going to operate with clear and defined integrity. And he has continued to do that to this day.
Wow.
And to me, if you don't have integrity, your team won't trust you.
Right.
Your team will see you as inconsistent,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
they'll not buy into your vision. And if you don't have those things, you're probably going to have a lot of turnover. You're going to have a lot of employees who lack direction,
Hmm.
and you'll have a lot of employees who will question authority, which is okay to do. But the reality is that can all be prevented.
Hmm. With one simple tweak of a trait that you may struggle with. So if let me ask you a question then. If someone is struggling with integrity, can this be a skill that is improved and
Yes.
taught? Okay. Can you give us some tips on that?
I'm going to tell you what somebody told me.
Okay.
When I graduated college in 1983, I ran for a city council position in the town I grew up in. And at 22 years old, I was elected.
Wow.
I was also reelected 3 years later. Um, and right after the election, the city manager asked me to sit down with him. And we had a nice little chat. And he said, "Well, let me just tell you why I called you here today." He said, "I'm going to ask you for a pretty big favor." And I didn't know what he was going to ask. I thought he was going to ask me to vote on something, or I just didn't know.
Mhm.
But what he said to me was the following. He says, "What I want you to do is every night when you put your head on the pillow, I want you to ask yourself the following question. Did I do anything today for my own self benefit that was at the expense of another individual, group of individuals, or organization?"
Wow, that's powerful.
And he said, if you can say no to that question, you can rest peacefully. However, if and when you say yes, you need to keep your eyes open, figure out how to never do that again, and potentially how to unwind what you did.
Wow.
That started integrity for me like being hit upside the head with a 2x4. And that is something that ever since that day in November 1983, I asked myself that very question.
Wow.
And I'm happy to say that I can't recall a time when I've ever answered that question yes. I just, you would think I would, there had to be a day, and there probably was. I can't remember a day when
Mhm.
I've ever answered that question, yes. So,
Yeah.
and if people just did that one simple thing, they will immediately start realizing where that lack of integrity is, and they can correct it just by asking themselves that question and be committed. And you can't just take Tuesday off because you know you may have fallen off the wagon, so it doesn't count. You have to ask that question. It's like doing your prayers at night, right? You
Yeah.
have to ask that question every night. And so to me, that's actionable.
It's huge. And I love that it didn't just stop with ask yourself the question, because you could ask yourself the question, right? And it just answer yes every night and be like, oh, well, but it goes to unraveling, redoing, fixing it so that
Correct.
you're moving forward in deeper integrity. So powerful. What a wise, wise person.
He very, very wise. And the first time I told that story was unfortunately after he died, and I had received a phone call from a reporter. And it was some years later, it was probably almost a decade later.
Mhm.
And the newspaper reporter had recalled me, knew me, and said, "Hey, I knew that Don was city manager when you were on the city council. What one thing do you remember from Don?" And I said, "That's an easy one, and I practice it every day." And I told that story, and she actually printed it in the newspaper on it in the article she was writing about him.
Wow. Wow. That's fabulous. What a great lesson and that you're still passing it on all these decades later.
Correct.
You're still passing it on. Let's walk through a couple of the other pillars. I love that you have all these pillars to help us become better leaders. Does that also help us become better communicators, better team members? Do these principles help us build better teams?
All of those things, and all in different ways. Um, I look at compassion and empathy, and those are two very, very different things. In compassion, you can't really solve the problem for the person or the concern, but you can help direct them.
Hmm.
And with empathy, you can help them solve the problem, but you also have to be able to understand and put yourself in their shoes.
Yes.
And that takes talent.
Hmm.
And so that's, I'm a there's two things I'm also big in terms of my management style. One is mentoring, and the second one is really to understand and know the people that you work with, and understand the challenges that are going on in their lives, whether it's at work or at home. Because you're going to have a situation someday where you're going to notice that Carrie isn't herself today. And that's when the leader truly has to step up and basically say, and I'm sorry, I'm using you as an example, Carrie, it's none of my business, but you seem a little off today. Would you like to talk about it? And have an opportunity to have that door open to be able to help. We have a serious mental health crisis in this country. And while I'm not a mental health counselor, I am someone who can recognize when someone's not themselves and be able to provide some assistance or support.
That is beautiful. I agree 100% with everything you are saying. You're speaking my language. It's what I geek out over. I remember when I was studying for my MBA, we're going back to 2005 when I began that course of study. And I was going through um, one of the classes. So I did my MBA online, and I did an entire semester of a class in 6 weeks. That's how the program was set up. So it was one class at a time, but the entire semester in 6 weeks. Then you had a week off and you did another 6 week thing for 2 years straight. And when I got to the segment that was on building teams and a lot of kind of very emotional intelligence training. I remember sitting on a small plane. We were flying from New York to Boston. I was sitting like right across the aisle from my employer, and they were actually the ones paying for my MBA. They had offered to pay for it if I would be the manager of their entire practice when I graduated, and I agreed. And we were sitting on that plane, and I at the time was I mean, I was an adult going back for an advanced degree with 7 kids that also had to be taken care of and make sure you're at all of their school events, all the things. So time was limited. So I never let a moment go by that I was not actively doing something. I fit school in the pockets that I had. So I was sitting on the plane and I was going through that book and I was highlighting things, and he glanced across the aisle, which was small, and he looked over and he said, "Excuse me." And I said, "Yes." He said, "Don't think you're going to be bringing any of that bull into our office." It stunned me, totally stunned me. I said, "But this is leadership." And he said, "That is poppycock."
Whoa.
Stunned me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to stay here. you know, and I did bring it in. I did, because I knew how important it was. Do you ever run into companies, into people who really don't believe that we need to bring any of this communication, team building in, because they still cling to the idea from the 80s where it's just, you're going to do what I said to do because I said to do it, and I don't care what's going on in your life?
Unfortunately, I have to say yes.
Yeah.
I have run into it, and it's funny. Somebody asked me one day, "When does leadership start?" And I said, "Okay." And they followed it up with, "Well, for example, does it start when you sit at your desk, or when you get to your office and sit at your desk?" And I said, "No, it starts when your feet hit the floor in the morning, and it doesn't end till you go to sleep at night."
Yeah.
And if you wait, so I also often, when I was going to an office, would park in the parking lot and take the opportunity to talk to people, whether they worked in my area or not, on the way into the office and to the elevator. It was an opportunity for me to know more people, to be able to get a smile out of people who were probably couldn't wait to get their first cup of coffee,
Mhm.
and to hopefully get them started on a good day. And so to me, that's leadership. Um, I once knew a leader who actually would park on the side of a building and would take the freight elevator up to the office to avoid interacting with people.
Wow.
And I said, "I don't ever want to be that guy.
No.
I'm a people person, and I want to be with my people." And or the leader that, what I often say is, you're not going to be successful if you're the leader that keeps shifting the chairs on the Titanic.
Mm.
And what I mean is the leader who continually rotates the next level of management in or out or into other places to hide their own sense of failures or inferiorities.
Right.
At the end of the day, the Titanic is still going to sink.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter who you put in those chairs, but eventually you're going to sink.
Right.
And so there's those leaders, and unfortunately I've seen some of those as well.
Yes. Yeah. This is powerful. I think that there is still, well, I know there is, because I do my own leadership training and team building and developing leaders in on your team's trainings, which I love. So that's why I absolutely love talking to you, because I I'm learning so much, which is the beauty of talking to other people who are in the same field. I don't believe there is that it is any kind of what is the word I'm looking for? Like, you are my, what is my word? We get to build each other up. We are not in competition. That's it. We're not in competition with each other. There's so many people out there that need this training. One person could not possibly do it. So why not learn from each other and be able to build each other's skill sets from the stories and the things we learn from each other? And when I'm training, so many times the biggest takeaway that these executives will send me is, we never really thought about sitting down and getting to know our teams. We never really thought about asking them about their families. And one of the questions I was, do you know their names? Do you know how many kids they have? Do you know what kind of car they drive? What do you know about the people that are on your team? Is there a pillar in your book that talks about that as effective leadership? Like, really, like you just said, being with your people, not taking the freight elevator to avoid them.
Um, Not specifically. However, when I started the book process, my list was longer than six.
I'm sure.
And I felt that the number was like 15 or 16.
Hmm.
I felt that that was too many to be actionable. I
Hmm.
wanted something that wouldn't scare people away.
Agreed.
So I narrowed it down to what I felt was the most important six. Now, I do sneak in some other things like mentoring into the
Yes.
book and the importance of that. Also, what I call journaling or note taking.
Yes.
I put that in. So those were actually on the list, but I felt I needed to sneak them in somewhere as well.
Mhm.
So not specifically in the book to what you're asking, but I think you can see in part of the book that that could be an extension
Yes.
of where this ends up going.
Yes. Yes. And I do. And that's why I asked the question. The importance of getting to know your people really is a thread that runs through the whole thing, runs
It
through the
does. It does. The other thing is, I'm often asked by someone who says, "Hey, I just got promoted. I'm going to meet my team tomorrow. What do I say?"
Mm,
And my response is nothing.
yeah.
You introduce yourself and then listen. If you go in with a prepared speech of this is how it's going to go
Mhm.
and this is what we're going to do, you've lost them. And if you don't show integrity from that first moment, you will never gain the trust of the team. You need to let them tell you about themselves and what they've been going through, whether good or bad or whatever. But your first priority in that meeting is to listen and actively listen and take notes. And because that's going to be, you're going to reflect upon that meeting for a very, very long time with those employees. And that's the first opportunity to make an impression that A, you're approachable, B, you care about them, and you're going to work collectively with them to get the goal and to set the goals and then exceed those goals year in, year out.
Yes. I love that. I love that. It makes me think of there's a Netflix series that I cannot come up with the name right now, but the main doctor in the series, his main phrase through the entire however many years it ran is, "How can I help? How can I help?" That's how he started his first day. Got up on stage and he just said, "So how can I help?" And then he just started taking notes. It's exactly what you just said, and it's beautiful, and I love it, and I wish we could get this into the ears of every human being on the earth. Just, how can I help? Help me understand. What do you need? What Tell me how you're feeling. We could learn so much and we could do so much better.
We absolutely could. We absolutely could. In fact, in my management style today, I have a team meeting once a week, and I also have for all of my direct reports a one-on-one meeting, and that one-on-one meeting is their meeting.
Mm,
It's their opportunity to come and ask me for whatever assistance they need, or ask me or tell me what is happening in their world or in their life. If they come unprepared for that, I'm prepared to ask questions to try to draw that out. But it's really their time to be able to express the good, the bad, the ugly, the whatever, and in a safe place so that we can work to resolve those things that could be holding that employee back or holding the team back.
what an incredibly beautiful, wonderful idea. People must, well, you just said they come back and ask, "Can I work for you again?" You are a manager, a leader that people want to work for, and you're few and far between. So do you go and teach this to teams in your area? Do you fly places and do these trainings? How do we get the word of Jim Carlough out into the masses?
I have started to do that. I've actually gone to a couple of college campuses
Nice.
and spoke to graduating seniors,
Mm-hmm.
not at graduation, but in like one was in a marketing department, and we had 80 students there. And what really impressed me was how intent they listened,
Wow.
the questions they asked, and how many of them had already run into bosses that lacked integrity. The one lecture I did, it lasted an hour, but 20 of those 70 or 90 kids stayed after class to talk more.
Wow.
And to me,
Oh,
I felt like I can't leave. I'm not leaving without answering every one of their questions. And so I'm starting to do that more and more.
fabulous.
And so, the book was the first part, but I'm also evolving this into a training course.
Yes.
And it's going to be an 8-week training course. And we're going to do a week on each pillar, and then additional week at the front end and the back end. First an introduction, and then a what did we learn, and where do we go from here.
Mhm.
So that's in development, and so when it's ready, it'll get out on my website, and people can enroll in that class. And eventually, I would like it to be something that they could do on their own, as opposed to having me do it. But I think initially for the first year or so, I would feel like I'm cheating them if I'm not giving them a part of me.
Yes.
So, for an hour a week, they get an hour with me, and we talk about a pillar, and we dissect it, and we talk about how we can implement it. And have you ever had a situation? And so I've got the framework for it. Now I've got to put the guts together for it.
I love it. I love it. So this leads into I'm looking at the clock saying, how did our time go this fast? This just means, Jim, that we're going to have you back. Maybe we could do one podcast at a time, going through each pillar at a time.
We could certainly do that.
I would love to do that. It would be powerful. We'll get it out on YouTube and out on the podcast airwaves. And that way people can follow your journey too as this course comes available. So, how can people find you? And when they go to your website, is there a way for them to get on a mailing list so they can be informed when all these things are ready?
Absolutely. So the website is real easy. So if they're looking at my name on the screen, just take that space away between Jim and Carlough and put www dot in front of it and .com at the end of it. So it's just www.jimcarlough.com.
And
Um,
Carlo, for those of you who are listening, is spelled Carlough,
correct.
jimcarlough.com.
And on the website, you can sign up to be on the newsletter list. You
Okay.
can order the book on the website. You can learn more about me on the website and the different things that I do. And so you'll know me pretty well after you go on the website.
Fabulous. Fabulous. And speaking of your book, you have a pretty sweet offering for today for our listeners. You want to go over that now? It fits right in here.
I absolutely do. One of the things that I always like to do, whether it's with employees or whatever after meetings, is collect feedback, good or bad, because we all need it and it helps us all develop.
Yes.
So for the first 3 people who log a comment to either the show notes or to the YouTube or to Carrie's YouTube channel, the first 3 people that log a comment, doesn't matter what it is, could be what you took from the episode, could be this is all poppycock or whatever, but the first 3 people will get an autographed copy of the book. Just reach out to CarrieVee, and give her your name. Don't put your address in the public
Oh,
domain.
yes, please don't do that.
Just use your name, and she'll reach back out to you to get your address, and she'll pass it to me, and I will ship a free book out to the first 3 people.
This is fabulous. And by the way, I love the name Carrie Ann. That's my niece. And I always tell her, well, I know you were named after me. She wasn't, but I take all credit for her name. So
Good for you.
you can call me Carrie Ann as much as you want. Okay, so what is your superpower, Jim?
My superpower, I have to really think about what my real superpower is. And I think my real superpower is my ability to bring people together.
I can see that.
I think that's my one superpower. I tend to have a trusting demeanor, a calm demeanor.
Mhm.
So I think I'm the type of person who can bring the people together.
I sense that and see that already. Thank you for sharing that. So before we let you go, we're going to need a writing prompt. You said that in the book, you weave through also that power of writing and journaling. And I believe very strongly in the power of journaling, like picking up a pen and journaling, not typing it somewhere, but actually writing and letting your brain go wild with the pen. But sometimes we just need a little prompt. And that's what we want from you is a writing prompt.
A writing prompt. Okay. So, whatever you're going through, um, I want you all to just take this to heart. It's always going to get better.
Mm,
Okay.
beautiful.
It's always going to get better. No matter what you're going through, it's going to get better. I tell it to my adult children. It's going to get better. Tomorrow, the sun will still shine. It may rain tomorrow, but there is a sun behind those clouds.
Yeah.
And so, as bad as it may be, it's only in the moment that it's bad, and that will evolve. And I'd leave you with this: if any of you are thinking or don't have a mentor and want to start to get into that, I don't have a lot of bandwidth to mentor additional people, but I do have the bandwidth to help you, kind of direct you to what to look for in a mentor.
Yes.
And so I would be willing to offer that to any of the listeners as well.
Wow. Very generous. This is why you bring people together. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you hanging out with us today, giving of your time, which I know is our most precious commodity. So I don't take that lightly. And I'm looking forward to having you back. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you for having me, and I'll be glad to be back.
Fabulous. We're going to schedule it before I let you go today. Thank you.